Welcome to another episode of Let's Pretend I Don't Know Anything.
Is that it?
That's it. That's
Okay.
what I got.
That's
what
the
I
intro.
got.
That's
Yeah.
great. I love it.
Yeah. What else do I have?
Yeah.
Today we're meeting with Dr. Brooke Keels, Chief Clinical Officer at Lighthouse Recovery. So, Brooke, we were talking about podcasts we've done in the past, and that maybe the message we need to be getting across is kind of bringing this all down to the basics, so we can do kind of education. What are we looking at? And felt like probably the best place to start is signs and symptoms, warning signs that your loved one may be suffering with substance use disorder or mental health disorder, a mental health disorder. So what, as a parent and a doctor, what would you say are some of the first warning signs to be looking at for?
I think some of the first things is that you start seeing a shift in personality, right? There tends to be like a behavioral, like observable shift in whether it's like consistency. Maybe we all spend time together as a family, but then, your loved one is running a little bit late, or there's just kind of these like, that feels weird.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's kind of that. And I think often we, especially as a parent, kind of go, oh, well, they're going through this or that. And that's okay. Like, I think you should consistently assess. But I think one of the first things most parents notice is, well, they're isolating. They're not spending as much time with us. There's a change in friendships and relationships. And communication usually drops off significantly. And I think some parents would be like, we didn't really talk all that much before, but then we weren't talking at all.
Yeah, and some of that, like it's really challenging to differentiate between normal teenage behavior and there's problematic behavior. There's something going on.
Yes.
Right. Because I know with my kids, they've all gone through phases where they don't want to talk to me,
right,
or go out to family dinner,
right.
But then there's there's other times where they rebound,
right. And you don't run at them and say, are you using drugs? You're just assessing.
I totally do. Yeah. Breathalyzer in the face.
Yeah. Pee in this cup.
Yeah.
Now. Yeah. It's just something to notice. And I think that that's the core of all of this is what are you noticing?
Yeah. And so, seeing these kind of symptoms, but seeing it over time, like,
right.
Or that they're getting more severe.
Yep.
Right. So, like the example of, okay, well, we went out to a family dinner every Friday night, and now all of a sudden, Johnny doesn't want to come to dinner on Friday with the rest of the family. Okay, maybe he's just had a bad day. He doesn't want to talk about it right now.
Right.
So the simple things we can do is try to have a conversation with them about what's going on. Let them know that we're there for them, and then give them space to develop. But if this is a pattern that is shown over time, and they are withdrawing more and more over time, then we may have a concern.
Yeah.
Right.
I think usually even the follow up to that, I feel like there's kind of layers to it, and so it's like the small behavioral changes, and then it's usually like the personality changes, maybe a little more anger, more frustration,
Edgy.
Yeah. Those sorts of things, and then it'll generally get into like the physical symptoms. And so I think, like you're saying, when you give it space and you're paying attention, if things are not going well, there will be a progression, and there will be other things that pop up as well.
And when I think back to like my own story and being in recovery now, and when I started using, I had this same group of friends for years, and we all kind of started experimenting together, with alcohol and THC. They also kind of progressed in this area too, but none of them had substance use disorder. When my use was getting worse, I ended up with a whole new group of friends. Right. It was this shift from the guys that I had known since we were in fourth grade to then suddenly when I was like a freshman or sophomore in high school, I had a whole other group of friends that I was hanging out with most of the time, and they were separating from me.
Right.
Right. And that's something that I'm always thinking of, looking at with my kids is like, are they shifting groups of friends? Large personality changes.
Yep.
I think another thing that I know too, that was also with myself, was like things that used to bring me joy were no longer bringing me joy. Yeah. So I dropped out of all sports. I stopped playing sports. I wasn't interested in football or boxing or any of that anymore. I just stopped caring.
Yeah.
And so another big shift in somebody's life, where if somebody's always been in sports and then suddenly they're not interested in it.
Yeah.
All of their friends have been people on the team that they hung out with, and now they're not hanging out with them. It's easy to want to say, well, yeah, but they're not playing that sport anymore. But maybe it's the other way around. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's a shift in friends is one thing, but paying attention to what that shift is, like what are these other kids doing? Like what are kind of their goals and how do they align? Because at the end of the day, adolescents especially connect over common interests. And so if you're looking and you're like, I don't know what my kid would have in common with any of these, you know, people he's hanging out with, like help make it make sense. You know, and I think it's something worth paying attention to. And I know we see a lot. Very rarely does someone maintain their friend group through their use or struggles. And also how many people who were maybe loners all of a sudden have these friends consistently. I've heard so many parents be like, gosh, we were just so glad they found a group of people. But it's because the substances are bringing everybody together, because it is instant friends. Yeah. You can find people, especially if you're paying. You know, you can find people to hang out with you. Yeah. And if you felt alone and then now you have a whole group of people that want to spend time with you. So it's also noticing what are their goals and getting to know them at some level. And, you know, I don't know if that's even a thing anymore. Like we do it, like we talk to other kids' parents. I know your kids are older than mine is, but, you know, I feel like some of that has changed where some parents tell us like, we just know that they were at school together. We don't like know who their family is, or we don't know anything about them.
I think there's a lot of that. It's also, there's a big difference from like when we were growing up, all of our friends were pretty much in somewhat similar neighborhood. You know? Like you kind of knew
2-mile radius
who was around. And because of social media, I mean, my kids are friends with people in towns nearby, not just in our neighborhood. Like because they've got a broader pool.
Yeah, definitely.
So that is different, and it is challenging to kind of know what's going on or who this person is, and anxiety inducing. Yeah. No. Yeah. It's like,
so now you have to be good at stalking.
Yes.
People. And you know what? It's a skill.
I'm not good at it.
Oh, really? Yeah, luckily, I can happily do that for you.
Yeah,
you just send me a name.
My wife's great.
Yeah, she's got it.
Yeah, she's great. So I just let her run with it.
Yeah, some people have the skill. Some people, you know.
I am not very tech savvy, so it's a little bit of a challenge for me.
That's good.
I don't really use social media that much. I'm on there, but like I don't.
Right. Yeah. I don't either, but I can stalk you. Like I can find you. You know. When you mentioned like not doing like football and the things you enjoyed anymore, and I don't know if you even remember this or if your family ever noticed, was there a physical shift? Because that's another thing that I feel like we don't talk about very often, but actually had a family session the other day, and the mom was mentioning how she could tell like he had lost a lot of weight and, you know, he smelled like alcohol or the substance all of the time. And, you know, just that sort of thing. And that kind of usually is like it's gotten pretty bad if we're like physically changing. But do you remember?
Well, so when I was younger and my youth started, because I did start pretty young. So I also went through like my adolescent growth spurt a little early, and I lost a lot of weight at that time. So I don't know if that had as much to do with the use or just growing up. Right. Now, as my use progressed in later years, yes, like I would fluctuate a lot. If I if I was, well, I was never sober, but if I was not using stimulants, cocaine, I would gain weight rapidly. And then when I was back on it, I would lose weight rapidly.
Right.
To where when I moved here from Boston, I was about 160 pounds.
Wow.
And for me, that's really thin. Like my rib cage is sticking out.
Yeah.
And stuff. Yeah. So it was, I'd lost a lot of weight
Right.
in that. Which I don't know. I mean, it was noticeable to me.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was noticeable to my family when I got back to Texas and they saw the change in me. I also, I would say, when I was younger, though, it wasn't just the weight loss, but my hygiene changed significantly.
Right.
I quit caring for myself as much. And probably smelled like patchouli, a lot of patchouli oil in my Birkenstocks.
It's never you and as being a hippie. Like, it's never come together for me.
Yeah, like my hair was long and, but I think, there was that. My parents also had pretty clear warning signs. Like I'd just leave my bong sitting out on the table. So,
yeah,
you
weren't keeping it a secret.
I wasn't really hiding it, you know? But so, and that's a clear warning sign. So if their drugs are sitting out on the table, you might have a problem.
Yes.
Yeah. The self-care, though, that is a common thread that we see all the time at Lighthouse. It's like where individuals have really just, and I think it's a slow, demise into it. They're slowly becoming apathetic. And so things like not just things that used to bring them joy, but even caring about their appearance or how they smell or brushing their teeth isn't important anymore.
Yeah.
And then that just becomes normal.
Yeah.
And that happens with mental health issues too.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily just mean it's substance use. If you're starting to see those things, that's a clear indicator of depression as well.
Yes.
So somebody who's struggling to get moving, they don't want to engage, they don't want to communicate, their self-care is falling apart. Those are definitely signs of mental health issues as well. Yeah. So it doesn't mean it's isolated either. It could be both. It could be one or the other.
It's often both.
It's often both. Most of the time it's both.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I think just with the access of substances now at the gas station.
Anywhere.
You can just, want to do drugs today? Sure. You could just, it's available. And so, and if you remember being a teenager, which every year gets further and further away from me, but, if you are, being a teenager is hard enough, like being an adolescent is hard enough. And like, the mood swings, all of these things that are just come with the territory. But then you've got a group of friends who can provide you a substance that makes you feel better and you have connection. Like those are two very strong driving forces. During an adolescent period, and then it tends to hang on, when things are not going well. And I think another thing too that we see often is that a kid may not drop the ball on the things the parents value. So maybe it's like, well, their grades were fine and they stayed in football. Yeah. Right. But there were all of these other shifts that happened. And I think that kind of as a parent too, you have to be aware of like, what are the things my kid actually values? Yes. And so, and we don't have to wait for them to fail or to withdraw from things to be like, are you okay? Like just checking in with them. Again, none of this is to indicate go make a big deal out of it, but just for you as a parent to assess and intervene in, hopefully initially gentle ways that they can be honest with you about what they're struggling with.
Yeah. Well, I think this has been great because it's a lot of information for families to look at for their adolescent children. In the next segment, I think we talk about young adult and adult children and loved ones in general. Yeah. And signs and symptoms that are there. I really want to get across to everybody is that if you believe something like this is going on and if you have these problems or feel that these problems exist within your loved ones, you are not alone in this. There are resources for you. There is help available, and you don't have to suffer in silence, and you don't have to allow them to continue to suffer in silence. Thanks for joining us on this episode, and we'll see you soon.